What is up, the guys and girls? Welcome back to Christian Penguin 1990. My name is Matthew. Sorry I've been away for a while, but I had to get a new webcam and get everything set up. But I've got the notes and everything. We're going to continue with creation versus evolutionism, and today we're talking about mutations. Now, we're going to cover the evolutionary side first. One of the things they try to use to prove their theory, apart from long geologic time, which we've covered, and the record of fossils, which we have covered a little bit and we'll go over more in depth, is mutations. That's the third one. Now, with mutations, they are supposed to have happened randomly, and while they're random mutations, it causes one kind of animal to become a different kind of animal over millions and millions of years, which is just total nonsense. But that's what they teach, that is these random mutations that are beneficial mutations somehow that causes this to occur. Now, it is interesting to know that a mutation is considered damage to a single DNA unit or a gene. Sorry, I got something in my eye here. If it occurs in a somatic or a body gene, it only injures the individual. However, if it occurs in a gametic or reproductive gene, it is passed on to the generations. So in other words, if the mutation is within the reproductive genes, then it's passed on from father, son, father, son, father, son, and and vice versa. And that's what it's saying. So if it is a detrimental mutation, then the detrimental mutation will continue to be passed on as long as it is in the reproductive gene. If it is in just a gene of the body, it will only affect, say, me, and it will not affect my children. That's what that's saying. Now, the top three, once again, proofs for biological evolutionism is the fossils, natural selection, which we've already covered, and mutations. Now, that's for biological. That's no overall. That's just biological. Mutations have never been beneficial. All mutations have been detrimental to any organism. Mutations weaken organisms and don't cause evolutionism. So, in other words, the mutation does not make the organism stronger as required by evolutionism. It actually makes them weaker because they're all detrimental. None of them have been beneficial. However, there have been some examples given, but I will go over those a little bit later. Mutations will usually bring about one of three types of changes within genes and chromosomes. And the first change is an alteration of DNA letter sequence in the genes, so it restructures the DNA. Gross changes in chromosomes, inversion, translocation, and so on, so it messes up your chromosomes. Change in the number of chromosomes, polyploidy or haploidy. And basically it is supposed to either increase your number of chromosomes or decrease them. However, we'll go over that as well. Hurdles of mutations. This is important. They must occur frequently, not randomly. They must be beneficial and affect dramatic enough change so that one kind of animal becomes another kind. So in other words, it has to be enough change to where a cow becomes a horse. Those are two different kinds of animals. Some say species, but you get speciation. They're getting it messed up. It's kinds of animals. So it's not speciation. Mutations are very rare. This is one of the problems. They are so rare that they couldn't produce all the necessary traits of life. Evolutionism would require direct and purposeful changes, not random ones. So in other words, they are saying that these random mutations is what help cause evolutionism. However, the problem is it has to be very frequent, not random, and it has to be specifically pinpointed. In other words, for a scale to become a feather, that's a very direct, specific mutation. It can't just be, okay, one day this animal decides, you know what, I want feathers instead of scales, and then millions of years later, out pops a feather. It's not going to work that way. It has to be very specific, and it has to happen all the time in order for that to occur over their millions of years as they talk about it, which that's not what happens. And so, in other words, again, not random ones. So if it's random, it can't be specific. It can't be all the time. Another problem, random effects. Mutations are always random, rare, and never, ever purposeful. This has been observed by C.H. Waddington and Murray Eden. So in other words, what they showed was that mutations were never specifically directed at a certain thing. They were always random. They were never helpful. They were very rare, and they were never purposeful. So in other words, like I said, with the scale becoming a feather, that would never happen because a mutation is rare and random and it does not have a purpose, it just happens. And actually, a lot of mutations, 99.9999% of all mutations, are overuse of already existing genetic code. So in other words, the code that where you see some of these turtles that have two heads, and I think there was one with a cow that had a leg coming out of its back and stuff like that. That's just overuse of already existing genetic material, and it is a detrimental mutation, not a helpful one. Number 3 problem. Not helpful, which we just covered. Evolutionism requires improvement. Mutations do not help or improve, but instead only weaken or injure the organism. This was noticed and documented by H.J. Muller, or Muller, M-U-L-L-E-R. So what he documented was that every mutation in the history of science that he could find was detrimental. It didn't help at all. It hurt the organism. It never helped it. So again, there's showing that, nope, there's no helpful mutations. And like I said, people try to give examples, but I'll go over them in a minute. Harmful effects. Mutations are harmful. They weaken or damage the organism. So again, mutations hurt. They don't help. And we've kind of covered that a lot, but we're still not done. Let's go over 28 reasons why it is not possible for mutations to help cause evolutionism. Number 1. Not once in all the experiments has even one beneficial mutation been recorded. So in other words, in all their experiments, through all the evolutionists trying to make beneficial mutations by hitting, say, a fruit fly with a bunch of radiation to cause it to mutate, not a single one of them, and all of them, not just the fruit fly, but in all of them, has a beneficial mutation been documented. They've all been non-beneficial whatsoever. Number 2, only harmful. The organism either dies or its offspring dies soon after. So in other words, the organism either dies right off the bat, or the offspring die pretty quickly within the first 2 to 3 generations. So that's the genetic load, and within the first 2 to 3 generations, it usually dies off pretty quickly. So number 3, eliminates. Natural selection is supposed to weed out mutations by killing off the offspring that has them. This was noticed by G. Stebbins and Herbert Milson. So in other words, through natural selection, which is one of their proofs for evolutionism, it's supposed to weed out the weaker animals. So if all mutations are harmful and not beneficial, the natural selection will weed them out and get rid of them because they're bad for the organism and species to survive, and they'll get rid of them. So again, their own philosophy backfires right there. Number 4. Can't read my own writing. Mutagus, I think. Mutate. Yeah. Yeah, scientists have urged for the removal of mutagenic chemicals because they are harmful to people. So in other words, something that can cause a mutation is harmful. So scientists are saying get rid of it because it can cause mutations. Well, isn't that what you want to help prove evolutionism? So why do you want to get rid of something that helps prove evolutionism? You see what I'm saying? So, and anything that can cause mutation that is not a natural mutation, I guess, it is considered bad and they want to get rid of it. Number 5, dangerous accidents. The randomness of mutations are pure chance accidents and not purposeful. So in other words, if there's a mutation that pops up, 1 is not beneficial and 2 is not purposeful, is not directed, it just happens. And it's always bad. It's never a good mutation. Number 6, intertwined catastrophe. So in other words, each gene affects many characteristics. Mutations to a gene would cause havoc. So in other words, where I said earlier, it can affect your chromosome count. So imagine you're sitting here and you're supposed to have, say, 24 chromosomes. Mutation hits and you only have 22. Well, that 2 chromosomes might have been what helped you see. It might have been what helped you hear. And it's actually detrimental to you. Now, people can still function, but it is a detrimental because it makes them weaker than the rest of the people by biological standpoint because they lost one of their senses. Number 7, only random effects. This would annihilate any value of a mutation. So in other words, it has to be constant, not just totally random when it happens. So if you figure over the millions and millions of years that they say this stuff happened, you might get 5 mutations. So again, it's totally random. And it would, even over the long span of time that they say they have, it would not still help cause evolutions because they'd be totally random and too few. Not too many, too few. So again, it still will not work. All affected mutations have a widespread effect. Many genes would have to be mutated in a good way at one time in order to be beneficial. So in other words, it can't just happen over millions of years. It has to happen all right then and there. And again, that's not what they teach, so therefore it will not help, therefore it is wrong. Number 9, like throwing rocks. Evolutionism being accomplished by random mutations is like trying to fix a television by throwing a rock at it. H.G. Muller again mentioned this in one of his studies. So, and again, this is evolutionists, by the way. These guys are evolutionists. What he noticed was that if mutation was supposed to help cause evolutionism, then it really has to be specific, because if it's just random mutations, like it said, it's like throwing a rock into the desert and hoping you hit an animal and that caused a mutation. It's not going to work. It's not going to happen. Number 10, this one I found very interesting. Mathematically impossible. That's key. The odds of getting 4 mutations in sequence is 1 times 10 to the 28th power. Significantly multiply that number to account for amount needed to cause evolutionism in a single organism. So in other words, you'd have to even multiply that even more to account for having what would be needed to cause evolutionism, and it's not going to work. So there's all these problems with it, and they refuse to acknowledge it because this is all they have. But yeah, again, even mathematics says no, it's not going to work. Number 11. Time is not a solution. So in other words, trying to add millions and billions of years doesn't make evolutionism a reality, nor would it cause any beneficial mutation. So just because you say, okay, long ago and far away, that happened. It's not going to work, folks. That's a fairy tale. Okay, so trying to add all this time is not going to say, okay, well, yeah, way back in the past it happened, and that's how it happened. No, it's not going to work. If you go to a child and you say, long ago and far away, they know a fairy tale, a story, a lie, people that are made up or make-believe are about to be talked about. So when you come to people and say millions and billions of years, you're saying long ago and far away, hey folks, here comes a fairy tale. And that's really what it is. It's a belief system too. You have to believe it. There is no actual factual 100% fact proof of evolutionism. It's a total belief system, and it's religious in many aspects. Number 12 problem, gene stability. Since mutations are very rare, this allows genes to be stable. So in other words, mutations, if they were constant, would cause the genes to constantly be unstable. But for an organism to live, their genes have to remain stable. They have to survive, they have to be stable. Everything has to be working properly. So again, mutations would hurt, not help. 13. Against all law. Basically, evolutionism won't cover or occur by randomness. This point was proven by Michael Denton, and what he did was, if you get mutations by biological law, it is, by the evolutionary standards anyway, it's supposed to cause one kind to become another kind, but you don't see that. You see they're random, they're very rare when they do occur, which, let's say, you have 100 animals. Out of 100 animals, you might have 5 have a mutation. And out of those 5, none of them are beneficial. So that's what he was basically pointing out. Number 14, syntropy. It is impossible for any organism to survive unless it was created complete, with everything needed to survive right off the bat. And again, that kind of goes to where we're going to take from the creation model and say spontaneous generation. It just evolved one day, everything was there. Wrong. It was created spontaneously by God when He spoke it into existence, with everything working properly like it's supposed to. And to try and help prove their theory, they've pulled again from the creation side to, yep, see, there's truth in ours. No, there's not. And if they start getting on a slippery slope and they realize they're running out of stuff to try and prove it, they start pulling from the creation side, which actually does stick to science, believe it or not. Number 15, minor changes are damaging to offspring. The minor mutations damage offspring. This was noticed by J.F. Crow and George G. Simpson. So in other words, they noticed that any mutation hurt the offspring. And again, that goes back to within 2 to 3 generations, they're going to die off because they're actually hurting, not helping. Number 16 problem. Need to be done. I can't read my own writing half the time. Let's see. Need to be done one generation. Hundreds of mutations, all being positive and working together, would be needed to change one kind into another kind within one generation. So again, they're just totally random, but yet they need to be pinpoint specific and right then and there when you need it. And that's not what you see. Okay, problem 17. Told you, we got 28 problems. Inconsequential. Accomplishments, only small changes occur, not big ones, and those are detrimental. So not only they're detrimental, you hardly see them until a long, like I said, 2 or 3 generations later when you start seeing them die off. And that's probably what's leading to some of the honeybees dying off a lot. And so it's probably some mutation they're not noticing inside the insects, and it's causing them to just drop dead. Number 18, traits are totally interconnected. So in other words, traits are closely interlocked. Anything that affects one trait affects all traits. So all traits would need to be together and working at the same time harmoniously, not random mutation pops in and there, we're good. It doesn't work that way, folks. 19. Too many related factors. The probability of mutations changing one kind into another kind is 1 in 480 times 10 to the 50th power. Again, this was noted by L.L. Cohen, C-O-H-E-N. So in other words, he found through his study that enormous number is the amount of chance for a mutation to be beneficial to enough to change one kind, say a cow into a horse into a cow type deal, into another. And he's like, it's totally impossible. It didn't happen in the past and it's not happening today. No matter how much time you give it, it's not going to happen. Number 20, reproductive changes are low. Mutational changes in reproductive cells occur far more infrequently than in cells throughout the body. So again, it's very rare, but it's also very low in reproductive changes, so you still won't notice it. And if it's there, again, within 2 to 3 generations, you'll start noticing it. It'll be detrimental, and they'll die off. 21. Evolutionism requires increasing complexity. Evolutionism is supposed to lead to more evolved life forms. Mutations tear down organisms, not help them evolve. So in other words, a mutation tears down the genetic structure. It doesn't build it up. So again, it would not cause evolution. That's been noted multiple times in science labs by evolutionists, not just creationists. But both have noted it. Just one problem. Creationists acknowledge it, that, hey, this is detrimental. Evolutionists won't. They tuck it under the rug. They don't want you to know it. 22. Evolution requires new information. Mutations don't add new information. They remove or reuse already existing information. I'll go over that in a minute when it gets to some of the examples. But like I just said, it either reuses it, gives you an extra leg, extra head, whatever, but that's already pre-existing information. It's not new. Or it takes away from the genetic structure. Number 24. Don't worry, we're almost there. Evolution requires complicated networking. Mutations would change or damage the delicate genetic network in the organism. So in other words, a mutation, by making these changes, would affect the genetic makeup of the organism. Therefore, it would become detrimental, and again, it would die off. You see where we're going here. They're not helping. They're actually hurting and killing the organisms off. All right, number 25. Visible and invisible mutations. This is going to be kind of part A, part B thing. Part A, for every visible mutation, there are 20 lethal ones that are not noticed and are invisible. So in other words, let's go back to the cow with the leg growing out of its back. That's a visible mutation. But it's saying for that one that is visible, there's 20 lethal, deadly versions inside the animal that are not being seen. So in other words, that animal's going to die anyway because there's other versions that you don't see that are invisible. Then there are the lethal mutations that change but don't kill. Now, what that means is that's where it slowly dies off and it doesn't kill the starting organism that had the mutation. That's what that's talking about. Number 26. Like I said, don't worry, we're almost there. Pain's almost over. Number 26. Never higher vitality than parent. So again, that goes back to the offspring dying off. Mutated offspring have less strength and mortality than the parents, therefore they die off within within 2 to 3 generations. And again, the animal or species dies off and it never becomes another kind of animal and so on. So again, it's detrimental, not helpful. Mutations, number 27, mutations are not producing new kinds of animals because they're detrimental. They don't change, they don't cause evolution. Number 28, and we're done with the 28 problems, but then we got to go over some other stuff. Gene uniqueness forbids kind change. The law of biogenesis, which is what the Bible adheres to, which is a scientific proven fact because it is a law of science for biology, dogs will always produce a dog. In other words, the kind will always produce the same kind of animal. Just like in Genesis. That is not only biblical, that is scientific fact and law. That is what is seen today. Anything past that where a dog over millions of years produces a cat is not scientific. It is not proven. It is not observed. It is not tested and is not provable or proven false. Therefore, it cannot be a viable theory. And so, creationists like myself, biblical creationists, by the way, not those that try to add evolution into it. That's not biblical creationism. Biblical creationists adhere to the law of biogenesis. A dog will always produce a dog. You might get different breeds of dogs or different species and subspecies, but they're always going to be what? A dog. A canine type animal. You're not going to get anything different, ever. So, that is what is seen. And now, when I say seen, that is what has been observed. We saw a dog just give birth to a dog. Okay, well, we're going to test that. So I want to start a 100-year study. So we're going to have scientists over that 100 years take over as people get older, retire, whatever. Or actually, you know what? Let's make it a 1,000-year study. That'll be, they have to adhere to it, and they just keep breeding these dogs over and over again, and they, you know what? We're not getting anything but a dog. We might get different colors, different hair lengths, but we're not getting anything besides a canine animal. They're always going to be a dog. Therefore, the law of biogenesis takes effect, the law stating the dog will always produce a dog. However, evolutionism violates that law, saying that millions of years ago the dog produced a cat, or a cat produced the dog. That's fairy tale, folks. It's not scientific. And I try to stick to what's scientific. And everything I have studied has led me to sticking with creation side because it actually follows science. And the parts that we have to believe, such as God created, we openly admit, yeah, we believe that. We can't scientifically prove it, but we believe it. We'll admit it. Evolutionists will never admit that they only believe because they have no actual proof. Now, so-called beneficial mutations. I told you we were going to get to it. One of the ones is sickle cell anemia. It has been tried. This one makes me laugh. I'm sorry. It's wrong to laugh at it in a way. But sickle cell anemia is basically what prevents the blood from properly absorbing food and oxygen. People actually die from this. And the idea that it's a beneficial mutation is because if they have sickle cell anemia, these people cannot contract malaria. And the best way to describe that viewpoint is, that's like saying if I cut off my left foot, I'll never get athlete's foot in my left foot. Well, I'm also don't have my left foot, which means I can't run, I can't walk. Now, you got to think back a couple thousand years where we didn't have wheelchairs and so on. And I would be the weak link, therefore I would be the one taken out. So, to say that because they have this disease, they can't get this disease, that's beneficial. That's stupid. I mean, I hate trying to call somebody that, but That's just stupid. Like trying to say because you have pneumonia, you're not going to catch the flu. Pneumonia is worse than the flu. It is ridiculous. But they put it in textbooks as, here's a beneficial mutation. No, it's not. It's a terrible mutation. Okay. Another one. Drug-resistant germs. Now, this was even in the news recently. That these germs are evolving. They're becoming resistant. Wrong. They're not evolving at all. Here's what's happening. These are actually not mutated strains. I repeat, they are not mutated strains. Any mutated strain quickly dies out. So what is actually happening is this. It is actually normal variant strains and not mutated ones. What is actually occurring is people not taking antibiotics long enough to kill off the natural strain, which makes it stronger. Because just like us, we become immune, or we, fight off infection over time because our immune system is getting rid of it. And what is happening is if you have something that is a germ, or say a bacteria or a virus, and you have to take antibiotics for it. And here's how I know, because I'm guilty of it. Doctor gives you antibiotics. Take this every day for, let's say, 20 days. 20 days. That's close. 20 days. I feel good. It's only day 14. Throw them away. Guess what? Germ comes back stronger than ever. Antibiotic doesn't even touch it. So they have to go to a stronger antibiotic. Again, same thing. Oh, I feel better. Toss it aside. Well, here comes the thing again. Doc, I don't know why I keep getting sick. Are you taking it for the required amount of time? Well, no, I feel better about the 12th day, so I stopped taking it. Well, that's why. And what it is all you're doing is helping it fight. It is not mutating at all. All it's doing is just starting to get immune to it because you're not killing it off. And the mutations they do see, which again, they die off, but the mutation that does happen, and it dies off very, very quickly now, is it pulls away from the genetic code, and the part of the genetic code it pulls from is what is needed for the antibiotic to lock onto to kill the bacteria or the virus. And again, it's pulling away genetic information. It is not adding. It is not making it more complex. Therefore, it is detrimental, not beneficial. But what is actually being seen, and this has been studied over and over again, and the media lies, I hate to tell you. Even with the last election, we saw they lied on both sides. Mainstream media, they lied on a lot of stuff for Hillary Clinton. They lied on a lot of stuff for Donald Trump. They lie. And what they're doing is they're pushing certain agendas. And they're wanting to push that these super bugs are out there. These bugs are going to kill all these people. Now, what's causing them to happen is this. They're not killing them off in the hospital. They're only becoming stronger because they're just adapting to what you give them. And if you don't kill it off, it's going to come back even stronger and cause more problems. But that is all for mutations. I try my best to try and just condense everything. That was probably... You can see a lot of my stuff over there where I researched it. I want to say that was probably a good stack of journals and stuff, probably like that. I had to condense down to this and nitpick and like, okay. And when I say nitpick, I'm not saying, oh, this is stuff to help me prove my side. No, what I'm saying is what is mostly taught, and I have to show why it's wrong. And that's why I'm saying I had to nitpick it. And what was mostly taught is what I covered. So probably what could have been a 3-hour thing on mutations, I had to condense down to 30 minutes. So hopefully this video has helped y'all out, seeing the difference in creation and evolutionism and the fallacy of mutations. Be here next time, as I will try, since I got the webcam and everything, I'll try to keep up with the videos. Next time we'll cover animals and plants. So I'll see you then. God bless. Hope y'all have a great day. Later.